The sky over my backyard was glowing with colors that night, each firework painting the summer sky with freedom and joy. It was my annual Independence Day fireworks show, something I'd done for years to bring the neighborhood together. But this time, HOA Karen decided to turn it into her personal battlefield. She called 911 screaming about illegal explosives and dangerous activity, not knowing the fire chief who would show up was me. Let us know where you're watching from today, and if you're new here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to join our growing community. I remember the first time my father lit up the night sky with fireworks. It was back when I was just a boy, no taller than the fence post in our backyard. We didn't have much money, but every 4th of July, Dad would save up enough to buy a box of sparklers, a few Roman candles, and maybe one big finale rocket. It wasn't much compared to the grand displays in the city, but to us and to the neighbors who gathered on our lawn, it was magic. Now, decades later, I carry that tradition forward. Each year, I put on a fireworks show for the neighborhood, and it's grown into something far bigger than Dad could have imagined. I'm not just some guy lighting a few sparklers anymore. I'm the fire chief of our county, with all the permits, training, and resources to make it safe and unforgettable. Families bring lawn chairs, kids run around waving glow sticks, and there's always the smell of grilled burgers and corn on the cob filling the air. It's not just a show, it's a tradition that unites us all. This year, I wanted to make it extra special. My son, Jake, just returned home from serving overseas, and I wanted him to feel the warmth of community, the kind of American pride that reminds you what home feels like. I spent weeks preparing, checking every detail from safety barriers to fire extinguishers, from the timing of the fireworks to the music that would play during the finale. My neighbors were excited, too. Mrs. Jenkins, who's been living across the street for 40 years, brought her famous apple pie. The Johnson kids had painted signs that said, "Happy 4th of July" with red, white, and blue handprints. It felt like everything was falling into place. But not everyone was thrilled. Karen, every neighborhood has someone who treats joy like a crime and who can't stand to see people smiling unless she's the reason. Karen is our HOA president, self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac, and she has made it her life's mission to ruin mine. It's not just about the fireworks. She's fought me over everything: my fence color, the height of my grass, even the American flag I hung on my porch. She's the type who walks around with a clipboard and a frown, looking for reasons to hand out fines. The week before the fireworks show, Karen marched up to me while I was testing the sound system in my yard. She didn't even say hello. "Fireworks are illegal here," she snapped, arms crossed like she was about to give me detention. I looked up from the cables I was untangling and smiled, trying to keep my voice steady. "Not when you have the right permits." And I do. "Karen, everything is safe and approved." She squinted at me like she didn't believe a single word. "We'll see about that. I'll be calling the authorities. This neighborhood isn't a carnival," I chuckled, but deep down, I knew she meant it. Karen never bluffs. She thrives on drama, and she'd rather see the whole neighborhood miserable than let one person have a moment of joy. Still, I wasn't about to let her ruin my father's tradition or this special night for my son. I spent the following days making sure everything was flawless. I double-checked the distance between launch points and homes. I added extra fireproof mats and made sure the fire crew on standby was fully briefed. As the fire chief, I've seen what happens when people get careless with fireworks, and I wasn't going to let that happen on my watch. On the morning of the 4th, the neighborhood was alive with energy. Flags waved from nearly every porch. Kids drew stars and stripes on the sidewalks with chalk, and the smell of barbecue already lingered in the warm air. Jake was helping me set up the racks for the larger shells while humming the national anthem. He looked at me and said, "Dad, this is the kind of thing that makes coming home worth it." That hit me harder than I expected. As the sun dipped behind the trees and the first fireflies started to glow, people began arriving with blankets and coolers. I made the rounds, shaking hands and thanking everyone for coming. The anticipation was electric except for the shadow of Karen, who stood at the end of her driveway, arms crossed, glaring at me like I was plotting an act of war. I ignored her. I had a show to run. Just before the first firework was set to launch, I took a moment to breathe. I thought of Dad, of all the years we'd stood in the same backyard, laughing and celebrating freedom. I thought of Jake, home safe and smiling. And I thought of this community, how we all came together despite our differences. That's what this night was about. But as I reached for the fuse to start the first rocket, I saw Karen pull out her phone, her face twisted in anger. I didn't know it yet, but that single call would set off a chain of events that would turn this night into the wildest 4th of July I'd ever experienced. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. With an opinion, she was a storm wrapped in pearls and a power-walking suit. From the moment she moved into our community, she acted as though every blade of grass and every streetlight belonged to her. And somehow she'd finagled her way into becoming the HOA president, which, in her mind, meant she was queen of everything. I'd managed to stay out of her way for years, but when it came to events like my fireworks show, she came out swinging. In her world, fun was a direct violation of her rules, which, by the way, were not even official HOA guidelines half the time. She made them up as she went. The trouble started 2 weeks before Independence Day. I had just come back from a morning run when I saw her standing in my driveway, arms folded, tapping her foot like a metronome of doom. "Are you planning another one of your," she paused for dramatic effect, "backyard fire hazards this year?" I wiped the sweat from my brow and smiled, trying to keep things polite. "You mean my 4th of July fireworks show? Yeah, I am. It's all permitted and safe. Karen, you don't have to worry." Her face twisted as if I'd just told her I was planning to burn down the entire neighborhood. Permitted or not, it's a nuisance. The noise, the smoke, it upsets people. I've already had complaints. I wanted to laugh. From who yourself? Karen's eyes narrowed into little slits. "That's it. I'm calling a special HOA meeting. This reckless behavior has to stop." She turned on her heel and marched off like she was leading a parade of one. Later that day, I got a notice taped to my mailbox, an official letter from Karen, stating that fireworks of any kind were prohibited under her interpretation of the HOA guidelines. It wasn't even signed by the other board members, just her. I took the notice straight to my office, where I kept all my fire department paperwork. Within minutes, I had a copy of my permits and a letter from the county confirming that the fireworks were not only legal, but would be supervised by certified fire safety professionals. I made a few copies and walked door to door, handing them to the neighbors. The response, overwhelming support. Mrs. Jenkins laughed so hard she almost spilled her sweet tea. "Oh, honey, Karen just doesn't like joy. Don't you let her ruin this. We'll all be there." By the time I finished my rounds, I felt a wave of encouragement. People wanted this show. They needed it. It wasn't just about fireworks, it was about unity, something we all craved after a tough year. But Karen wasn't giving up. Every day leading up to the 4th, she found new ways to sabotage me. One morning, I woke to find a bright yellow HOA violation tag on my fence. She claimed it was too high. Another day, she parked her car halfway across my driveway, blocking my truck from leaving. When I confronted her, she smirked and said, "Oh, I must have misjudged the space. It was all petty nonsense." But I kept my cool. I knew what she was trying to do, bait me into an argument so she could paint me as the dangerous neighbor. The day before the show, Karen took things to the next level. I caught her lurking near my backyard with her phone out, snapping pictures of the setup. I walked over and asked, "Something I can help you with?" She didn't even look embarrassed, just documenting evidence for when the authorities come. "You'll see, Chief, you can't hide behind that badge forever." Her words stung, not because they were true, because they weren't, but because she had this way of twisting things, making me feel like I was the villain in my own story. That night, I sat on the porch with Jake, both of us sipping cold lemonade. He looked at me and said, "Dad, why does that woman hate you so much?" I shrugged. "Some people just can't stand seeing others happy." "Son, it's not really about me. It's about her." He nodded, but I could tell he was angry on my behalf. And honestly, I was tired too. I wasn't going to let her ruin this. Not for me. Not for Jake. Not for the neighborhood. The next evening, when the first guests started arriving with their picnic blankets and coolers, I spotted Karen standing at the end of the street, phone in hand. She was watching me like a hawk, waiting for any chance to pounce. And sure enough, when the first firework shot into the air, she pulled out her phone and dialed. The late summer evening carried that unmistakable buzz, neighbors setting out folding chairs, kids racing across lawns with sparklers, and the smell of barbecue drifting through the air. I stood in my backyard, double-checking every fuse, every safety barrier, and every fire extinguisher. My crew from the fire department had already arrived in casual clothes to lend a hand. They weren't just there for safety, they were my friends, and they knew how much this night meant to me. The first small fireworks, golden fountains, and bright, crackling comets were set to go off just after sunset, leading up to the grand finale. I could feel the anticipation growing with every minute. People clapped me on the shoulder, thanking me for doing this for the neighborhood. Some of them had brought desserts, others cold drinks. It felt like a block party wrapped in patriotism, except for one sour face. Karen stood at the edge of her driveway, hands on her hips, phone at the ready. Her lips were pressed together like she was trying to keep them from trembling, but I could see her frustration boiling over. "Careful, folks," she shouted, her voice slicing through the laughter. "Those are illegal explosives he's setting up over there." No one paid her much mind. Mrs. Jenkins actually rolled her eyes and whispered to me, "Ignore her. She just can't stand seeing people have fun." But I wasn't ignoring Karen completely. I knew her type. It wasn't a matter of if she'd call 911, it was when. So I made sure to stay ahead of her game. I checked my permit again, the laminated document tucked safely into my back pocket, and nodded to my crew. Everything's by the book. I told them. As the sun disappeared, I gave a short speech to the crowd. Thank you all for coming. My dad started this tradition years ago, and I'm honored to carry it on. Everything tonight is completely safe and permitted, so relax, enjoy, and let's celebrate freedom together. The first spark shot into the air, bursting in a shimmering blue cascade. Cheers erupted from the crowd. Kids squealed and pointed at the sky, their faces glowing in the colorful light. It was perfect. Until Karen made her move. I saw her step back into her yard and press her phone to her ear. Her voice was loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. "Yes, this is an emergency. There's a man firing illegal explosives right now. Yes, right in the middle of the neighborhood. It's dangerous. Children could be hurt. I need someone here immediately." I sighed. There it was. The call I'd been expecting. Jake, who was crouched near the launch racks, glanced at me. "Dad, she's really calling 911. "Yeah," I said, trying not to let the frustration show. "Don't worry about it. I'll handle it." Little did Karen know. When she dialed 911, that call would bounce right through our county dispatch system straight to me. Being fire chief has its perks. I received an alert on my radio clipped to my belt. Report of illegal fireworks at Oak Ridge neighborhood. I almost laughed. I knew exactly who had called. Guess I'll be answering that call, I murmured to myself. While the fireworks continued, I pulled my truck keys from my pocket and slipped into the cab of my official fire chief's vehicle parked just down the street. Karen watched me leave, smirking, probably thinking I was about to run and hide. She had no idea what was coming. I radioed dispatch. "This is Chief Harper. I'm on scene at Oak Ridge. I'll respond personally." There was a pause. "Copy that. Chief, units are on standby if needed." "Perfect." I'd let this play out. Back at the yard, I heard Karen's voice again, louder now, as if trying to rally people to her side. "He's going to burn this place down. Just wait until the fire department shows up. They'll shut this whole thing down." But the neighbors weren't buying it. Mr. Johnson, a retired Army sergeant, finally had enough. "Karen, sit down and let folks enjoy the night. You're the only one here with a problem." Her jaw dropped. "I'm protecting this neighborhood," she snapped. "Mrs. Jenkins chimed in with her no-nonsense voice. "Protecting us from what happiness?" The crowd laughed, and Karen stormed off toward her porch, pacing like a general before battle. Meanwhile, I was gearing up for the next step. I slipped on my fire chief uniform, helmet, jacket, the whole thing, and made a quick call to the on-duty officers. "We might need a patrol car here for community safety. No code lights, just a presence." "Roger that, Chief," they replied. By the time the second set of fireworks was about to start, I was walking back up the street in full uniform. The fire truck rolled up quietly behind me. Heads turned. Kids whispered, "Whoa, is that the fire chief?" Karen froze, phone still in her hand, and her confident smirk vanished. Karen's face was priceless the moment she saw me walking toward her, not as her troublesome neighbor, but as the county fire chief in full uniform. For a second, she didn't seem to recognize me. Then her jaw dropped, and I swear I saw the color drain from her face faster than a popped balloon. The fire truck parked right behind her driveway, its quiet hum and flashing parking lights catching everyone's attention. A few officers from the sheriff's department, who had responded to my request for a presence, arrived seconds later. The crowd fell silent, all eyes on me, as if they expected the night to end right then and there. Karen, however, wasn't done with her performance. She waved her phone in the air. "Finally, you're here. Shut this man down before he burns our homes to the ground. He's breaking the law." I took a slow step forward, the reflective stripes of my jacket glowing under the streetlights. "Karen," I said, my voice calm but firm, "I am the fire chief of this county, and everything happening here tonight is fully permitted, inspected, and safe. You might want to put your phone away now." She blinked, clearly stunned. You're the fire chief, have been for the last 8 years, I said, holding up my badge for everyone to see. "And I personally signed off on this event." The crowd erupted into quiet murmurs, neighbors exchanging knowing looks. Mrs. Jenkins, bless her heart, couldn't hold back. "Oh, Karen, you've really done it this time," she said, chuckling. But Karen wasn't backing down. "Not yet. I don't care who you are," she spat. "Fireworks are dangerous. They could start fires. What kind of fire chief approves this kind of recklessness?" I took a step closer, looking her straight in the eye. The kind of fire chief who knows exactly what he's doing. The kind who spent months preparing, filing every permit, and setting up proper safety zones. There are fire suppression teams right here on standby. Every single shell is secured. You don't have to like it, but you don't get to lie about it. She glanced around, realizing no one was siding with her. The officers walked up, and one of them, a young deputy I'd trained years ago, nodded at me. "Evening, Chief. We got a call about illegal fireworks." I gestured toward the racks. "All legal, all documented. Here's the permit." I handed over the paperwork, which the deputy skimmed and quickly confirmed. "Looks good to me," he said, looking at Karen. "Ma'am, filing a false report isn't a joke. We've got bigger emergencies to deal with tonight." Karen's mouth fell open. "False report? Are you calling me a liar?" The deputy didn't flinch. "I'm saying you called in a serious emergency that doesn't exist. If this happens again, we'll have to write it up. Do you understand?" Her face turned bright red, and for a moment I thought she might actually explode. Instead, she crossed her arms, muttering under her breath, "This is unbelievable. I'm just trying to keep everyone safe." I turned back to the crowd, my voice carrying over the tension. "Folks, I appreciate your patience. The show's going to continue as planned. We've got everything under control here." Cheers went up from the neighbors, loud enough to make Karen flinch. Kids clapped and shouted, "Yay, fireworks." I couldn't help but smile. Karen had lost her audience, and she knew it, but I wasn't done. I took a moment to address her directly, my tone steady but pointed. "Karen, I respect anyone who looks out for safety, but what you're doing isn't about safety, it's about control. You've crossed a line. This isn't your personal kingdom, and your false accusations waste resources we could be using to handle real emergencies. Tonight, you're done." She didn't respond, just turned on her heel and stomped back to her porch, muttering something about calling the HOA board. As she disappeared into her house, I took a deep breath. The officers stayed nearby, chatting with the neighbors and enjoying some of the food folks had brought out. One of them chuckled. "Chief, I think you handled that better than I would have." "It's not the first time," I said, shaking my head. "Karen's been looking for a reason to make this personal for a long time. Tonight, she found out it doesn't work." I walked back to the lawn tracks where Jake was waiting, grinning from ear to ear. "That was something," he said. "I wish I had filmed her face when she realized you were the fire chief." "Don't worry," I said with a smirk. I think half the neighborhood got it on video. We laughed. And just like that, the tension broke. The crowd relaxed, folks settling back into their chairs, ready for the next round of fireworks. I gave a signal to my crew, and the show continued. The second round lit up the sky. Each burst of color mirrored in the wide-eyed amazement of kids sitting cross-legged on the grass. For me, it was more than a display of light and sound. It was a reminder of why I fought so hard to keep this tradition alive. But as beautiful as the fireworks were, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't finished. People like her rarely walk away without trying something else. And I was right. The real fireworks, figuratively speaking, were still ahead. The crowd had barely settled back into their chairs when the low rumble of an approaching fire truck echoed down the street. Even though I had called for a quiet patrol presence earlier, the engine was unmistakable big, red, and impossible to miss. Karen must have thought she'd won. From her porch, she came striding out like a peacock, pointing toward my yard as if she were directing traffic. "There! Right there! Shut it all down!" she yelled, her voice cracking with desperation. The truck rolled to a slow stop, its lights flashing softly. Two of my crew members, dressed in full fire department gear, hopped out, and I could see Karen's smug grin return. She turned to the neighbors, hands on her hips. "See, I told you this was illegal. The fire department is here to handle this mess." But then the doors opened wider, and I stepped out, first helmet under my arm, reflective chief's badge glinting under the streetlights. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder. "Wait, isn't that? Yeah, that's Luke, our fire chief." Karen's about to eat her words. Karen's grin faltered as I walked toward her. "Ma'am," I began, my tone professional. "This event is fully authorized and managed by the fire department, including me." She blinked, clearly thrown off. "What do you mean you're not the fire chief? You're my neighbor." I pulled out my badge and held it up for everyone to see. "I'm both. Karen, neighbor, and county fire chief. And tonight, I'm overseeing this fireworks show." Laughter rippled through the crowd, and I could see Karen's face turning bright red. She stammered, "Well, that's a conflict of interest. You can't supervise your own illegal party." "It's not illegal," I said firmly, cutting her off. "Everything here follows county regulations. We've got safety officers on site, water hoses ready, extinguishers set, and a team on standby. I could show you every permit and safety plan if you'd like, but something tells me you don't care about that." For a moment, I thought she might try to argue again, but the officers who had arrived earlier stepped in. One of them, Deputy Collins, approached Karen with a calm but no-nonsense tone. "Ma'am, we've reviewed the permits, and everything checks out. You've made multiple complaints tonight with no basis. If this continues, you may face a citation for false reporting." The silence that followed was deafening. Karen's eyes darted from the deputy to me, then to the crowd, as if hoping someone would take her side. But no one did. "Mrs." Jenkins leaned forward in her lawn chair and called out, "Karen, you might want to sit down before you embarrass yourself anymore." The neighbors chuckled, and Karen's lips tightened like she'd swallowed a lemon. "This is outrageous," she muttered. "I'll be filing a formal complaint with the HOA board." "You do that," I said with a calm smile. "But tonight, this show is happening." With that, I turned away from her and gave my crew the signal to start the next launch sequence. A barrage of golden willows and red bursts filled the sky, their reflections dancing in the wide eyes of the children. Applause followed every explosion, and I could feel the mood shifting back to joy and celebration. Jake came over, shaking his head with a grin. "Dad, that was priceless. You should have seen her face when you stepped out of that truck." "Oh, I saw it," I said with a laugh. "It's not every day Karen gets out. Karen'd." Still, I kept one eye on her porch as the night went on. She had retreated to her chair, arms folded, glaring at the fireworks like they'd personally offended her. But the truth was, her power had crumbled the moment everyone realized I wasn't just the guy next door. I was the authority she'd been threatening to call all along. The rest of the neighborhood seemed to take a kind of quiet satisfaction in watching Karen's downfall. People whispered to each other, smiling and shaking their heads. One man muttered, "We should have known Luke had this covered." Karen's all bark. As the show continued, I found myself thinking about how fragile control can be. Karen believed fear and rules gave her power. But in the end, truth and preparation always win. Tonight wasn't just about fireworks. It was about standing up to the kind of person who tries to dim everyone else's light. But as the last round of fireworks for this segment shot up, I had a feeling this wasn't over yet. Karen wasn't the type to let go of a grudge, and something told me she had another trick up her sleeve. The night air still hummed with the crackle of fireworks, but the real sparks were about to fly this time between me and Karen. I could see her pacing on her porch, phone in hand again, like she was itching to make another call. Maybe she thought if she kept pushing, someone would finally back her up. I wasn't about to let her spin the truth. Not tonight. I walked toward her house, calm but purposeful, while the neighbors watched from their chairs and picnic blankets. Every eye followed me like I was walking into the final round of a boxing match. Karen stiffened when she saw me coming, her chin lifting defiantly. "What now?" she snapped, holding up her phone like a weapon. "Are you here to intimidate me? You can't threaten a homeowner in her own yard." I stopped a few feet from her and pulled the folded permit from my jacket pocket. "No threats, Karen, just facts. Here, this is the official county permit for tonight's fireworks. It's signed by me, the fire marshal, and the county supervisor. It's legal, and it's safe." She didn't even look at the paper. "I don't care what piece of paper you wave around. The noise is unbearable, and you're traumatizing pets and children." Behind me, a chorus of voices rose from the crowd. "Our kids are fine." "Karen," someone shouted. "They love it." Another added. A few parents even clapped. And one mom held up her toddler, who was happily waving a glow stick. Karen's face flushed. "That's not the point. The smoke is polluting the air. We could all..." "Enough!" My voice cut through her rant like a siren. "You called 911 with false accusations. Do you realize that emergency responders could have been delayed from real emergencies because of your lies?" Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The deputy, Collins, stepped closer. "He's right. Ma'am, if this happens again, we'll file a report. False 911 calls are serious business." Karen whipped her head toward him. "So you're all just going to side with him because he's the fire chief? What about the rules? The HOA has regulations." I looked her straight in the eye. The HOA doesn't override county law. Karen, you know that. This isn't about rules, it's about you trying to control everyone. And tonight, you crossed a line. For a moment, the silence was so thick I could hear the distant echo of fireworks from a nearby town. Then Mrs. Jenkins, who never shied away from the truth, piped up, "Karen, you ought to be ashamed. Luke's doing something for the whole neighborhood, and all you can do is cause trouble. You used to smile once, didn't you? Or has that ship sailed?" A few people laughed, not meanly, but in that way neighbors do when they're tired of someone's nonsense. Karen's glare could have cut glass. "I'll be taking this to the board," she said finally, her voice trembling more from frustration than confidence. "You haven't heard the last of this." "Go ahead," I replied evenly. "But while you're busy writing complaints, we're going to enjoy the show." With that, I turned my back on her and walked back to the launch area. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause, the kind that wasn't just for the fireworks, but for standing up to someone who'd made life harder for all of us. Jake grinned at me as I passed. "Dad," he whispered, "I think you just won the neighborhood." "Not about winning," I said, though I couldn't help but smile. "It's about doing what's right." We lit the next round, and the night sky exploded with vibrant reds, whites, and blues. The crowd's oohs and ahs drowned out any mutters from Karen's porch. For a while, everything felt perfect. Families laughing, kids chasing each other with glow sticks, neighbors sharing food and stories. It was exactly what I wanted this night to be, but I wasn't naive. I knew Karen well enough to suspect she'd try something else. She was the kind of person who couldn't stand to lose. And as I glanced over at her house, I saw her inside, pacing, peeking through the blinds like she was plotting her next move. "Let her stew," Jake said, noticing where I was looking. "She can't ruin this night." I nodded, but deep down, I had a feeling the story wasn't over. The final act of defiance came just as we were preparing for the grand finale. I was busy coordinating the last sequence of fireworks when I noticed Karen on her porch again, this time with a megaphone. "Oh, for crying out loud," Jake muttered beside me. Karen's shrill voice blasted through the quiet lull before the next launch. "Attention, everyone! This entire event is dangerous and unauthorized. I demand that you clear this area before someone gets hurt." Her voice echoed off the houses, but instead of scattering, the neighbors just laughed. "Mrs." Jenkins yelled back. "Karen, we've got more faith in Luke than in your noise-making." I took a deep breath and walked toward Karen, my boots crunching on the gravel. I wasn't angry, I was done. "Karen, put the megaphone down," I said in a low, firm voice. She shook her head, clutching it like a lifeline. "No, you're endangering lives. I'm going to make sure the HOA fines you into the ground for this." Before I could respond, Deputy Collins approached from behind me. His patience had worn thin too. "Ma'am, that's enough. You've already filed a false report, and now you're disrupting a legal, permitted event. If you continue this, we'll have no choice but to remove you from the scene." Karen's jaw dropped. "You wouldn't dare. Try me," Collins said flatly. The neighbors cheered, and I could see Karen's confidence crumbling. She threw the megaphone down, the plastic clattering against the concrete. "This isn't over," she spat, her face red with fury. "Yes, it is," I said, my voice calm but final. "Karen, tonight you crossed every line calling 911 with lies, harassing your neighbors, and trying to sabotage something that brings people joy. Enough is enough." The tension hung in the air like a storm cloud, but Karen didn't have a comeback this time. She turned and stormed inside her house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Deputy Collins looked at me. "Chief, you handled that better than most. You want us to stick around for the rest of the show? Please," I said with a smile. "We'll keep it safe, but it's good to have a little backup." The mood shifted immediately after Karen disappeared. Neighbors clapped and cheered, some even shaking my hand. "Luke, you did the right thing." "Mr." Johnson said, his gravelly voice full of approval. "We've all had enough of her nonsense." I took a moment to look around. Families were gathered together, kids were laughing, and the warm glow of barbecue pits and lanterns gave everything a comforting light. This was what community meant. Jake nudged me with a grin. "Dad, I think Karen's going to have to find a new hobby after this. Maybe knitting or bird watching," I laughed. "Let's hope so. Though knowing her, she'll be plotting the next HOA battle first thing tomorrow." We returned to the launch area for the final sequence. I wanted this ending to mean something to be bigger than just fireworks. I wanted it to symbolize the resilience of this neighborhood, the way we stood together even when someone tried to divide us. As the finale started, the first massive shell shot up, bursting into a cascading display of gold and silver. The crowd gasped, then cheered as the sky filled with colors. I glanced at Jake, his face glowing in the reflection of the fireworks, and felt a swell of pride. The deputy stood nearby, smiling, while Mrs. Jenkins handed them slices of apple pie from the dessert table. "You boys deserve a treat," she told them, and they didn't argue. Karen's house remained dark and silent, her blinds tightly shut. I didn't need to see her to know she was still fuming, but in that moment, she no longer held any power here. Her attempt to ruin the night had only made the community stronger, more united. When the last firework burst into a giant red, white, and blue display, I felt a sense of victory not just for me, but for everyone who believed in standing up to unfairness. The crowd erupted in applause, cheering loud enough to echo down the street. I raised my hand in thanks, my voice carrying over the cheers. "Happy Independence Day, everyone. This is what freedom looks like." The grand finale was more than just a fireworks display. It was a statement. As the final wave of shells rocketed into the night sky, the bursts of red, white, and blue cascaded like waterfalls of light, shimmering against the darkness. Each explosion seemed to wipe away the tension Karen had tried to create. The cheers, the clapping, the kids' laughter, it all blended into one beautiful moment of unity. When the last spark faded and the echoes died down, the crowd erupted in applause. Neighbors stood, some whistling, others clapping me on the back. Mrs. Jenkins, always the heart of the block, handed me a slice of her pie with a warm smile. "Luke, your dad would have been proud. This was one for the books." I smiled, my throat tightening just a bit. "Thanks, Mrs. J." He started this, and I just keep trying to live up to it. Jake came over, holding 2 sodas, one for me. He looked happier than I'd seen him in months. Dad, this was perfect. I mean, yeah, Karen tried her best, but you handled her like a pro. I chuckled. Experience? Son, it's not my first time dealing with someone like her, but tonight was different. Tonight, it wasn't just about fireworks. It was about standing up for what's right. Across the street, I noticed a few neighbors lingering near Karen's house, whispering to each other. Her blinds were still shut, the porch light off. She was probably still stewing inside, typing up an angry email to the HOA board. But it didn't matter anymore. She'd called 911, tried to humiliate me, and ended up exposed in front of the entire neighborhood. Deputy Collins and the other officers stopped by on their way out, grabbing a quick snack from the dessert table. "Chief, I think you earned yourself some quiet for the rest of the night," Collins said, shaking my hand. "If she calls again, we'll handle it. But I doubt she will." "Appreciate you guys," I said. "You know how to keep things steady." As the crowd started packing up, families lingered to chat and help clean up. The Johnson kids were still waving their glow sticks, playing tag under the soft glow of the streetlights. It reminded me why I did this every year. It wasn't just for me or my dad's memory, it was for these folks, for this sense of belonging we all needed. When everyone was gone, I sat on my porch with Jake, the smell of smoke and barbecue still hanging in the air. The night was quiet again, except for the chirping of crickets. I leaned back, feeling both exhausted and content. "You know," Jake said, "Karen's probably going to come at you twice as hard next time." I smiled. "Let her. People like Karen think they can scare everyone into silence, but tonight proved something: truth, preparation, and community will always win out. She can try all she wants, but she doesn't own this neighborhood. We do." Jake nodded, and for a moment we just sat there, sipping our sodas, watching the faint smoke trails in the sky. I thought about the whole night, from Karen's frantic 911 call to the moment she realized I was the one in charge. The look on her face when I stepped out of that fire truck, that was something I'd never forget. But more than that, I'd remember the laughter, the gratitude, and the way the neighbors came together despite her efforts to divide us. Before heading inside, I took one last look at the quiet street. "Dad," I whispered, "I hope you're watching. We did it again." Karen would probably try to stir things up again, maybe complain about noise ordinances or start another campaign against me. But tonight, her power was gone. The neighbors had seen her for what she was: someone who wanted control, not safety, and they'd stood by me. The next morning, I woke to find a plate of homemade muffins left on my porch with a note that read, "Thank you for keeping our traditions alive. Chief, last night was unforgettable." That meant more to me than any title or badge. This wasn't just a victory against Karen, it was a victory for all of us. For every person who believes that good intentions and hard work will always outshine petty complaints and false accusations. As I cleaned up the last of the equipment, I felt proud of the show, proud of standing my ground, and proud of the community that came together when it mattered most. So, if you're watching this video, take it from me: don't let anyone bully you out of your traditions or joy. Sometimes, standing firm with truth on your side is the loudest firework of them all. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to join our growing community. There are plenty more stories like this one, and I'd love to share them with you. That night, as the smoke from the last firework faded into the summer sky, I felt a deep sense of peace. It wasn't just about winning against Karen, it was about protecting a tradition that meant something bigger than all of us. My father started this fireworks show as a simple gesture of love for family, neighbors, and country. Standing there with my son and seeing the joy on everyone's faces, I knew the tradition would carry on, no matter how many Karens tried to stop it. Karen's 911 stunt might have been her loudest move yet, but in the end, it only showed the truth: when a community stands together, there's no room for fear or control. And that's what real freedom looks like. I hope this story reminds you that standing up for what's right isn't always easy, but it's worth it. Whether it's preserving a family tradition or protecting your own values, Sometimes all it takes is one firm voice to turn the tide. If this story resonated with you, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're new here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to join our growing community. More stories of grit, justice, and heartfelt moments are coming your way, and I can't wait to share them with you.